This is a story about an enchanted house. It was called Enchanted because it was a place where everything seemed to come right. It looked much the same as all the other houses around, but there lived here all by themselves an elephant called Nellyphant, a giraffe called Tiny, and a kangaroo called Joe. In the garden there lived a robin. He was called Bob. And he had a friend who also lived in the garden. He had a nice house of his own under a mushroom. He was a worm, and he was called, quite simply, Worm. But inside the enchanted house, there lived Nellyphant, Tiny, and Joe. Nellyphant, the little elephant, Tiny, the giraffe, and Joe, the kangaroo, were having breakfast one morning when Nellyphant said, "I've invited Mrs. Lion to supper this evening. She's feeling very lonely, poor dear, as Mr. Lion's gone off on a hunting trip, and Leo, the little lion cub, is away all day. He's just started school." Leo really is a dear little lion, and she smiled at the thought of him as she had another cup of tea. Leo, on this particular day, however, was not being a dear little lion at all. He'd decided to play truant from school, partly because it was Monday, and at school he had to learn arithmetic on Mondays, which he didn't like, and partly because Felix, the fox, his school friend, teased him and said,
"I bet you wouldn't dare to stay away from school for a day and come fishing with me."
Leo, being a lion, said he would dare anything. So Monday found him by the brook that ran along near the enchanted house. It was a lovely day, and Leo, who didn't really care for fishing because he didn't like water, sat on the bank while the fish popped up and made faces at him. He stayed there for quite a long time. He knew it was a long time because he began to feel hungry. He looked to see if there was any sign of Felix, who disappeared down a hole in the ground ages before, saying he'd be back in a few minutes. However, he was not to be seen, so Leo decided he would eat the sandwiches his mother had cut for his lunch. He sat munching and feeling rather cross with Felix. Really, it was a bit mean to ask him out for the day and then go off and leave him on his own like that.
"A very foxy thing to do,"
grumbled Leo to himself as he chewed the last piece of sausage in his lunch pack. Suddenly he was aware of a buzzing, and then he realized that a bee had settled on his ear and was whispering something to him.
"What's that?"
said Leo crossly. He felt bad-tempered because he felt guilty about not going to school, and he wasn't even having much fun. "I told you," said the bee, sounding rather hurt, "but Felix the fox has gone to the fair. It's the last day, you know. It's in the field on the far side of the wood. There's music, and there are roundabouts and toffee apples, and all kinds of things. Why don't you go too? Don't let that sly fox think you don't know what's going on around here."
"Yes, you're right,"
said Leo with a little growl.
"I shall go to the fair too, and that will teach him not to run out on me."
"That's the spirit," said the bee. "Come along, I'll take you there." They went across the fields and along the little path through the wood, and in no time at all they were at the fair. It was the most exciting place Leo had ever seen in his life. He went on the roundabouts. He had several toffee apples. He went on the Big Dipper, and he won a coconut on the shies. He stopped to listen to a barrel organ. Then, suddenly, he he realized that he'd spent all his pocket money and all day at the fair. It was getting dark and past the time when he'd normally be home from school. His mother would be very worried. He must make for home at once. He realized that he was by himself and he wasn't too sure of the way home. The bee had gone and Felix had been no company at all. He felt rather fed up and a little nervous, but he set off bravely in the direction of the wood. He thought that if he walked straight through, it'd be a shortcut home. But it got darker, and he seemed to have been walking for ages and ages. There was a little tree stump with some yellow flowers beside it, and he realized that he'd walked round in a circle for the last hour at least. And after a while, he sat down on the tree stump and gave a growl of the utmost misery. He kept telling himself that lions were fierce, but he didn't feel very fierce. He was lost in the wood. Maybe he'd never find his way home. He longed to see his mother. He knew she'd be angry. She would know probably by now that he hadn't been to school, and she'd have made inquiries when he didn't come home. But he would have been very glad to see her, angry or not. Oh dear, how stupid he'd been. Just to look important in front of that horrid, sly fox. And he might never see his home again. Just then, there was a rustling of leaves and Nellyphant appeared. "You're lost, aren't you?" she said kindly. "Come along, I'll take you back with me." And before he had time to answer with even a small growl, he was up on her back and they strode off through the woods. In no time at all, he found himself in the enchanted house. Tiny gave him some cake, and Joe brought in a tray of hot drinks for everyone. Leo felt warm and very grateful. He was wondering about his mother when Nellyphant said, "I've got someone in the next room who wants to see you, Leo." The door opened, and his mother came in. She was so pleased to see him, she just hugged him. "It was a good job," said Nellyphant, "that the bee and I are friends, and that this window looks over the brook." Everyone looked surprised. Everyone, that is, but Leo, who realized that he was very lucky indeed. Leo's mother was a very wise lady, and she didn't believe in going on about things. "I think he's had rather a nasty shock, and he won't do it again," she said. "I think you're right," said Nellyphant. "Let's be in a gay mood." After a while, it was time for Leo and Leo's mother to go home. And as they said their goodbyes, Leo said, "I'll never forget my visit to the enchanted house, the place where everything comes right."